Hey guys, Lucas here. Sorry about the change of environment. I've got a different room I had to film in tonight because I had some stuff going on in the other room. But lots of updates, lots of cool things to show you, and let me just dive right into it. Cool, so the first thing I should mention, just real quick because it's more of a minor thing, QWER now changes the mode of the gizmo to one of four modes. Select is Q, W is translate, E is rotate, and R is scale. If you're a Maya user, this will sound very familiar. If you're familiar with other software packages, it may be something like that, but different. I like those because they're just in a quick row at the top of your keyboard, so pretty good. So the next big thing, in fact the biggest thing probably in this update, is the addition of primitives, as well as a few other updates up here too. So I'm going to go ahead and clear the scene so I can show you some of this stuff. First I'll go ahead and bring in a 3D model like I did before. Let's go ahead and bring in our guy. This comes in the same. However, if you click the box, you will get a 1 meter squared cubed box, I suppose. And the reason why this is so sluggish is because I'm recording on my laptop and also doing screen share at the same time. It's quite a GPU hog, so forgive the frame rate issue. But anyways, primitives are basically that let you build scenes out of very simple 3D shapes, and if you don't have access to a 3D software, or you just don't have too much familiarity with that stuff, this gives you a very simple basic tool set to kind of construct a scene out of. And the reason why this is important is obviously twofold. One, you want to be able to have kind of a representation of your scene. That's the beauty of the 3D viewport and the visualizer, is that you can actually see what your LEDs look like on a pseudo scene before you ever go and set it up in real life. We had this in GeoPix 0.9, but you could only import geometry, and the navigation was weird, and this is pretty much an entire overhaul of that. But primitives let you basically build stuff from scratch. If you guys think of some other primitives you'd like to see added in here that might be useful, let me know. I'm definitely open to adding them in. So we also have cylinders. So cylinders are pretty basic. There's no current control for the number of divisions. I may or may not add that in. I really want this to be basic scene representation, but if it ends up being a more accurate type of measurement for something, or where the divisions become relevant for some reason, I'll definitely add support for that in, probably in the attributes. Okay, so this is a good time to show you a couple of the other features that have been added. By the way, there's a cone, and there's a sphere, and they're all basically built around the 1 meter default. Everything's in meters, by the way. Let me go ahead and show you. So this delete button up here will delete geometry that you have selected. You can have multiple selected, you can have one, doesn't matter. Also, next to the delete key is the duplicate key. This is going to have extra functionality in the next update, where you can duplicate and continue duplicating along a certain distance. So if you take a cube, move it 100 centimeters, and you duplicate it again, it will move another 100 centimeters for you. So it'll be like the smart duplicate in 0.9. But for now, it's just a straight up duplicate. So the way this would work, you duplicate it, and you can move it wherever you want. To note, again, I mentioned this before, but the names don't change because we have a UUID system in the back end that's working pretty nice. So to keep yourself sane, I would definitely keep things named if it matters for you. This could be right sill, and this could be left sill. Alright, so one of the other features that I've been thinking about, it's also been requested on the comments section, is the ability to enact symmetry. So I'm not sure if I've shown you this menu. If you mouse over the top right of the viewport, you have some viewport buttons that are linked to various functionalities that you might want. These are new, X, Y, and Z mirroring. So let's go ahead and enable Z. So what this means is Z, mirroring across Z means you're mirroring across the Z axis, so the blue line in this case. So if I turn that on, this mode is very specific. It might change, but I'm feeling pretty good about where it is right now. You need 2 things selected. You can't have 3, you can't have 1, it has to be exactly 2. And if you have 1 item selected, your functionality doesn't change. It works like it always has. However, if you have 2 selected, the last item you have selected becomes the master. The other one becomes the slave, and when you move them, it keeps them proportional to where they are. The other great thing about this tool is if you don't have symmetry to start with, if you just click and don't move on the axis, you'll get your symmetry and then you can let go. So the way you could use this, say I want this at 100, -90, and 120. Let's go with -95. So we've got our numbers set up. This one's kind of at some weird location. So all we have to do is left click and hold on that, and it will queue up our TX. Now, of course, TY and TZ didn't do that because we don't have symmetry enabled for those. However, depending on how you want your workflow to be, you may not want them all enabled at the same time. In fact, I'd argue you probably wouldn't. So that's basically symmetry in a nutshell. Yeah, it's really great. It works from either side, so you can move stuff around. It works with groups, works with objects, doesn't matter. It can be 2 different objects as well. But you'll notice it also snaps the rest of the transforms as well. This is by design, so if you have a cylinder or a cube, let's go ahead and delete these cylinders real quick. Let's scale this a little bit. Let's duplicate it, put it over here. Let's get our symmetry going. It also works with rotate. So this is, I think, usually desirable. This is right now hard-coded that when you're mirroring across Z, you're actually affecting Y rotation. And if you're mirroring across X, you're going to be affecting different rotation. This is just kind of what makes sense from scene building. This might be broken down more, or it might be removed entirely. I don't know. So we'll have to see what you guys think and see how it works out in practice. If you disable that, whoops, you are back to rotating in the same direction, but relative to where you were. So that's where things are at there. By the way, these X buttons, I might change the icon. X will reset that group of parameters back to its default, which is 0 in most cases. For scale, it's 1. For rotates, rotate that back to 0. Rotate those back to 0. Rotate those back to 1. You're back to your default cube. So that's very useful too. Alright, I've got a little list. Let me make sure I've covered everything. Yeah, cool. Well, that's pretty much it for this update. Just to let you guys know what's coming up next. There's a few more features with the duplicate. There's going to be a snapping feature as well, so you can snap to grid or snap rotate. I'm not sure about snap rotate yet. I don't want to make this viewport too incredibly complicated. You know, if people want to have that much control over their 3D scene, then they can pick up a 3D application and do stuff there. This is really just made for the simple scene building that you might want to do. And once you get done with that, you can move on to pixel mapping, which is what this software is really all about. Just a few other things. You'll see this this light icon here, and this thing that looks like a calculator. This is the fixture button. Doesn't do anything right now. And this is the device button. These are going to be the bread and butter of the pixel mapping foundation that I'll be starting on in 1 week, maybe 2. It just depends. When you create a fixture could be a DMX light, it could be a WS2812B LED strip, it could be a panel made out of that same LED type. It really doesn't matter. Your pixel controller is going to take care of communicating with it what this will basically do is create an empty object where you can add LEDs or lights or channels. Really, you're adding channels. So in the case of DMX lights, you might have a red, green, and blue and a strobe channel. But then you might also have some pixels that are just RGB, and they may use the same RGB channels, but then the strobe will be a fourth channel that only applies to the DMX light. So this will be a way to bridge the gap between spatial mapping and complex combinations of channels that may not inherently make sense. There's a whole lot of stuff to do here. That's not for at least a month or two to come, but I'm really excited for that, and that's where this is going. So yeah, let me know what you think. If you have any questions, comments, feature requests, I'm open to hearing what you guys would like to see, and I'll talk to you next week. Thanks.